And now I'd like to introduce our next speaker to you, and that is Petr Lari, a co-founder of the Derevo Park Design Studio. He is a multiple winner of the Alaros contests, and he is the winner of the Grand Prix Award of Flower Jam 2019 in the medium garden category. Good morning to all of you. I hope you can hear me. Well, I'll briefly go over our design, and then I'll try to give you a specific example of the way we use it in real life, because I wanted to give you a couple of real-life examples. First and foremost, this contest is the best opportunity in Russia to demonstrate your skills and demonstrate your ideas, and it is funded. You don't have to look for sponsors. So I'd like to thank the organizers of the Flower Jam for giving us an opportunity to demonstrate what we actually can do. Can I get a clicker to move my presentation on? I'm sorry, it was right there. Our garden was installed in the Novy Arbat street, and it's a wind tunnel of sorts. It's windy all the time in the Novy Arbat street. It's just a kingdom of reinforced concrete, glass, vehicles, office buildings, you name it. And basically, this location became more attractive when we started greening it. The background appeared later on, but first we came up with a basic idea, and the main idea was to create a city of the future. And our perception of a city of the future is closely linked with plants growing through the reinforced concrete and through the rectangular buildings that we see all around major cities. In a city of the future, green zones will devour the reinforced concrete, and it will win over the city in general. And I guess this is the city that will be attractive for the citizens. Our design was quite linear, and actually the structures made of black steel just go to show you that this concept was behind the main idea. Most of the blocks above, within, and below met this requirement. Patricia is an artist by background, and I myself am an architect by background, so our approach was based on the architectural standards. Steel, wood, and plants are the three major components of our design. And the second idea that we were driven by was that by Malevich. You know, his most famous painting is called Black Square, and that's what we decided to use as a cornerstone of our design. A man can hardly conquer nature, and by the way, I'd like to thank Ergo. By the way, the Federal Security Service almost arrested us for trying to install all of that in the street. This is the way the inside looks like. And by the way, I saw lots of people visiting this garden, and delivery guys, you know, wearing yellow vests, love relaxing there. By the way, office workers and businessmen and business ladies would also come into the garden. It's a monochrome design. It's a complicated space, and we wanted to make it bright and sunny even in gloomy days. Let me now move on to the most popular trends. By the way, this year we also filed a request, and we hope that we're going to make it into the list of the finalists. But let me give you some background information first. It's a tribute to Scandinavian gardens, because, you know, the show gardens started with the Scandinavian gardens designed by Sir John Beckwood. I'm sorry if I mispronounce their names. William Forsyth, Sir Banks, or two other good examples. They would import plants from colonies to Europe, and it was something innovative on their part, because they had to adapt the foreign plants to their soils. And horticulture developed just like that for years on end. New, brighter plants would be brought from abroad, and so on and so forth. But times change, and I guess the 21st century is going to be the century of the so-called Scandinavian gardens. The new generation will focus on this particular trend, which is shared by St. Pete citizens. As for the major trends, I believe that one of them would be using local materials. You don't need to bring anything from afar. Since we want to preserve the environment, we won't any longer be bringing anything from Italy. We're going to be using local materials which are already available in the Northeast. We can use the local woods, we can use the local stones. By the way, local plants can be found in any adjacent woodland. We try to recreate the naturalistic woodlands and make it magical. By the way, this hotel has won several Michelin stars, and Polyform developed this particular device. Maybe a landscape designer took part in this project, but I believe that it's a good example of a brutal Scandinavian design, because as you can see, there is moss, there is you know, there are lots of stones. It's like the polar region, and we have to do our utmost to be able to design and recreate gardens like that. We love boulders, because if you arrange boulders in the right way, you can even create and design playgrounds for kids. And this is something that follow-up generations will be proud of. They will take pride in the local designs. But we naturally adapt the local materials to the contemporary designs. We also try to create such designs that require low maintenance. You don't have to water the plants, you don't have to fertilize them. That reduces the amount of chemicals needed to maintain the garden, and that's cool, that's awesome. Oftentimes we create spaces where hard landscaping is no longer important. Well, you might say that in this particular picture it's the building which is the cornerstone, but actually the answer is no, because it points out to the surroundings. The nature is the most important image in this picture, while the building itself is just a pointer to the nature. And smart integration of hard landscaping into the soft landscaping is what it's all about. It should be linked to the lives of the people who live in such buildings. What we should focus on is the mindset of the people living in such spaces. That's another good example of the design in question. Oh yeah, by the way, we call it the birth of a landscape designer. But actually, it's one of the ongoing trends. Maintainability of the gardens is one of the trends. Low maintenance gardens that don't require any manual labor are the most important trend. Well, it's good to be talking about such trends against the background of such a high-tech image. But anyway, space should be adapted to human beings living in the space. And the same holds true for the lighting, for the temperature. There are relevant technologies. We can change the warmth of the color depending on the mood of the person in question. Or, for instance, depending on the content in your smartphone, the space can be adapted to you. Music might start playing all around you, and that would be the music that you downloaded onto your smartphone from Yandex Music or App Store. This is something that will augment the gardens. Bionics is another Scandinavian or actually global trend, and that holds true for buildings, landscape designs, and spaces in general. What we see in the micro world is reflected in the macro world, and it's a global trend. No lawns is another ongoing trend, by the way. Most of the things that we try to create are aimed at convincing the developers not to install any lawns in the residential areas. Serials is the way to go. Complex spaces is another trend. It's not just about creating parks or open spaces where you can just relax. It's an integral part of the habitat. Even furniture could be part of the design. And Snaheta does just that. He uses hard landscaping, soft landscaping, and furniture in the designs. Well, do I have some more time, because I just wanted to demonstrate some of the real-life projects that we implemented. This is a residential area in St. Pete next to the Zvezdnaya subway station. This location is densely constructed with various buildings. Multiple developing companies are trying to build blocks of flats there. And, well, it's a classical example of a typical building, but we actually convinced the developer to use a small land spot to install a Scandinavian designed building. We convinced the developer that it would increase the real estate prices. It's an isolated area of sorts because the garden itself is within the buildings all around it. The idea was to use boulders produced in Karelia. Well, we used boulders weighing 150 tons. And by the way, the garden itself is above the parking lot, and we had to raise the roof of the parking lot to be able to plant trees there. By the way, pine trees were brought from the northeastern areas. That's a bit of Germany for you, because these are container-planted plants, but moss is local. And actually, our project turned out to be a success, both in terms of the color and the composition of the plants. And most of the people who visit this garden actually describe it as a contemporary Scandinavian brutal design. Would you please start the video?
Ну что, почувствовали
Well, I hope
серую
you get an impression
северную природу?
of the
Вопросы к Петру?
nature of the North. Any questions
Сейчас принесем микрофон.
from the floor? But wait for the mic, please.
Петр, вы называете
Peter,
эти сады все малоуходными.
you call these gardens low-maintenance
Я
gardens,
хочу, чтобы
but
наша молодежь,
I just wanted
которая будет продолжать
the
нас,
young
они не
generation
заблуждались.
not to make this mistake.
малоуходных
There is no
садов.
such thing
Вот
as
это
a
из нашей
low-maintenance
практики.
garden.
Даже
Trust
если
me,
они в
I'm talking from
скандинавском
experience.
стиле.
Even if it's
Все
a
сады
Scandinavian
наши
design
требуют
garden,
настоящего очень
it
хорошего
requires
И
constant
на это
maintenance.
тоже надо всем обращать
And
внимание.
well, I'd like
И
to
при
draw your
разработке
attention to that.
таких
So when you
проектов нужно
design
обязательно
such gardens,
это учитывать. Тем
keep
более,
this
что первый
in
наш
mind.
докладчик
Moreover,
очень
so
хорошо
that the
об этом
first speaker
сказал.
of the day talked about that at length. I totally agree with you. There is no such thing as no maintenance gardens. We can what we can do is minimize the maintenance costs, but we never tell developers that this garden is not going to require any maintenance. On the contrary, we just tell them that much maintenance is a must. I totally agree with you. There is no such thing as a no maintenance cost. Well, actually, you used low maintenance as a word. To hell with low maintenance gardens as well. Thank you.
Петр, скажите, пожалуйста, как вам
Peter, I was just wondering,
нашего климата, центра города, мхи или шайки удается интегрировать?
how do you manage to integrate moss into downtown spaces? Well, this is an interesting question because we use special technologies to recreate fog. We use special chemicals, and well, it's a must to find shady areas for moss and sunnier spaces for cereals. The comment is off the mic. Well, kids love lawns, so you cannot make do without them. But меня вот заинтересовал вот это комментарий про низкоуходные сады, и тем более ваш опыт в Санкт-Петербурге. В Великобритании сейчас не хватает садовников с нужными навыками. Вот ваши сады требуют большого ухода? Если да, то хватает или не хватает садовников с необходимыми навыками? The anchor is basically interpreting your question because the speaker did not have his simultaneous interpretation device.
Хорошо ухаживать за садами. Чувствуете ли вы такой недостаток в Санкт-Петербурге? И влияет ли этот не вполне правильный, не вполне грамотный уход на то, как вы проектируете?
Уход — это что-то, наверное, самое
Well,
сложное.
maintenance is the most difficult part, and Tamara Pavlova, our dendrologist, is the best expert. She trains younger guys, and being a landscape architect and an entrepreneur, I'm not a pundit on maintenance, but it's not my cup of tea, you know. You have to start with something, you have to start experimenting, and constant maintenance is something that we help developers with, because we are interested in tracing the efforts of the trained guys, and in addition to that, we send them to Europe to undergo training. Well, for instance, in Estonia, there is the Repin School, and there are other places that train horticulture experts. Any other questions?